Good morning, everyone. Firstly, let me thank All India Management Association for organizing this conference and inviting us to say in the opening session. Let me first start about this concept about the hybrid conference, which IMA has attempted. And I must confess, it's a first ever hybrid conference which I'm attending physically. And based on the experience which has happened so far, and also the likely speakers which are about to speak during the day and tomorrow, it appears most of the people have taken this hybrid conference as a online conference. Most of the people have decided to speak from their places. I will just take a minute. In January, when we were planning this conference, the idea was that the only people who are likely to travel from outside the country will be joining online, and all other people who will be in country will be joining offline and physical mode. But to my surprise, even the people who are in Delhi NCR have decided to join online. So, but in any case, thanks for many people who have come up for the discussion. And I think a small thing I just want to mention as a preference to the people who have taken all the pains to come and join here. When we'll be starting our question answer session or discussion session, a priority will be given to the people who are physically present in the room. And only once we are exhausted with their comments, we will go to the online people. I think that's a small thing which we can have for this discussion. While the topic which has been given to me is about modernization of procurement, and I'm still not really sure what does it mean, and whether procurement needs to be modernized or not, and what is the meaning of the modernization itself. And perhaps I leave it to my fellow speakers who are going to come after me to take on this decision. And I deliberately decided that I will very quickly take you through what has been done in the public procurement area in last few years in Government of India. Because if you see, last few years has been dynamic, perhaps too dynamic, and many things have changed. I always say that in case someone is outside procurement, say for last 5 years, and the person joins the procurement today, after a gap of 5 years, it is something like not knowing anything about procurement. In a 5 years, entire contour of the procurement has changed. I will just quickly take few of the things. It's not intended to be a detailed presentation on each topic, because otherwise each topic needs a one session. We'll be discussing on few of them. Global tender restrictions on the procurement from the countries sharing land border, general instructions which was also touched by the gentleman from ADB in the morning session, debarment guidelines, and MTD is the model tender documents. These are the 4 or 5 topics. I'll be spending not more than 2-3 minutes on each one of them, because it's more supposed to be a survey of the things which has been done. 2020, May 2020, as a part of the Atmanirbhar Bharat announcements made by the finance minister, it was decided that the global tender should be restricted. Kindly understand, there's no ban on the global tender, they have been restricted, one. Secondly, the question comes, then what's the meaning of the global tender itself? In case Government of India invite a tender and someone quotes from USA, is it a global tender? Or the global tender needs to be, say, published in some newspaper in Washington or the newspaper in Europe? That could be the second question which may come. So please kindly see the global tender, as per the definition given in the procurement manuals, only says 2 things. One, it needs to be invited in at least one more currency than Indian rupees. So in case the tender is invited only in Indian rupees, it's a domestic tender. And in case it's invited in at least one more currency, say rupee plus dollar, rupee plus euro, or rupee plus dollar plus euro, etc., then it's a global tender. One. Secondly, it's not to be published anywhere in like newspapers of the outside the country. Our own portal is good enough. Of course, from the payment purposes, letter of credit is could be one payment mode. So that's the basic definition. With this as a definition, Government of India has decided that up to 200 crores, the global tender should be restricted. It only means that in case someone wants to invite global tender up to rupees 200 crores, the approval is required at a much higher authority. Normally, it needs to go to the secretary coordination in the cabinet secretariat. So that the scrutiny is done at a higher level. That's a part of the Atmanirbhar program. It's all for all the procurements. Then some system has been devised that in case someone wants to go for a global tender, first domestic tender will be floated to see whether any source is available or not, or if at least source is available at some comparable prices. Those can be another thing could be there. We found certain problems while implementing these instructions that in case some item is required for a spare of a machinery, then those items will not be available in India. So we exempted those kind of things from the instructions. Last instruction in this regard has come only recently in January 2022, where the 128 items has been exempted from this kind of a process. Then many industry players have objected to this, and this list of 128 items is under revision. So you may see very soon this revision 2 of this 128 items. Second, restrictions on the procurement from countries sharing land border. This is more related to a security, on the advice of the security agencies in the country. And kindly see the word uses land border, not all the borders. Again, it says the procurement will be restricted. There is no ban. In case any bidder from these countries apply in our tender, that bidder needs to be prior registered with the competent authority. We'll discuss what's the meaning of the competent authority here. This registration, the competent registration, there's a committee which is headed by the Joint Secretary DPIT. It has a members from Ministry of Home Affairs, Ministry of External Affairs. Those are the members who will decide whether this particular bidder will be registered or not. There's one very peculiar thing about this instruction. This instruction is also applicable to all state governments also. So it's not Government of India using the constitutional provision of Article 287(1) has extended it to all state governments also. There's a process by which the application will be made by the bidders. Of course, the clearance or the registration can be given for over a period of time, or the class of items, or both of them. All contracts which has been, of course, once the registration has been given, it may expire over a period of time or maybe revoked for some reason. It has been very specifically mentioned the existing contracts will not be affected. The idea is not to disrupt the whole procurement process. It is applicable to all, whether it's a government department, PSUs, state governments, union territory, everyone. I think definition of a bidder is quite important, so I'll just spend a half a minute on this. The bidder also includes every entity which is established or registered in such a country, or even a subsidiary of such entity in India. So let's take an example in case there's so China is one of the country who shares the land border with India. So there's a Chinese company, there's a 100% subsidiary of the Chinese company in India, registered in India. So that will also stand covered, that will be also part of a bidder for this purpose. So the 100% subsidiary of a Chinese company, even though it is registered in India, it's a totally Indian company, will be required to be registered by the competent authority. Otherwise, that will not be entitled to get any orders from the government in procurement. Including in case the owner is from such a country. Third thing could be, you should not be even an agent of such an entity. Suppose, let's take a Lenovo laptop is there. The complete Lenovo laptop is imported. It may be imported directly or it may be say imported through Dubai. Even then, those Lenovo laptop will not be eligible to be bought by Government of India entity. Next question could be, suppose there is a joint venture with such a company. So even if there's any one member of the joint venture is from such a company, such a country, the whole joint venture will be required to take. Some of the person is not liking the presentation. Yeah. So even the subcontracting needs to be registered with us. one clarification which was issued in February 2021. In case you are buying something, a raw material of it is bought from such a country, that is permitted. Or even if some small assembly of the whole is taken from such a country, that is permitted. So that's a small relaxation is there. Of course, the same we have done in the global tender. In case you are buying some machine, spares or AMC, that is again permitted. In case you are a purchasing authority, a clause has been given in the document itself that you have to simply take this declaration from a bidder, and the responsibility of the procuring entity ends there. So they need not to go into any further details. Some of the countries which has been exempted, the countries where we have extended line of credit or where India is engaged in the development projects. So that excludes countries like Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, Myanmar. All other countries will still remain the part of this list. Next, we have issued some instructions in 29th of October 2021. This document has come after almost a year-long deliberations where all the top-notch think tanks of the country were involved, right from Niti Aayog, Chief Central Vigilance Commission, CAG, and many ministries. So it's a 22-page document which was issued in October. I have no intention to go whole of 22 pages, but I will just cover 2-3 salient points on this. One is about very often the problem we have seen in the case of consultancy contracts, that once certain persons are given in the big documents that there is a substitution. As soon as we place the contract on a particular consulting firm, we received a request that this person is no more available. Either he has left a job or ill, or we have seen very often. So for now we have stipulated, while it cannot be prevented 100%, but in case there is any change or substitution is required, some kind of financial penalties will be there. And this substitution cannot exceed more than 30%. In case substitution exceeds more than 30%, then perhaps this will be a breach of contract. Secondly, we have for the first time again introduced fixed budget system for the procurement of consulting contracts. The fixed budget contracts works that as a purchasing organization, I will give an amount of budget. So suppose I want to I want to have a report on the Indian economy. So I will say I have a ₹1 crore available with me, and then I will call for the offers. And the person who has the best credentials who will give this report in ₹1 crore will be selected. So it's unlike many typical QCBS or the L1 process. This can be especially used for the repetitive process. Suppose we want to have a water treatment plant in the 20 cities in a state. Now having 20 consulting tenders have their own problem and that time is taken. So these kind of the contracts can be used for them. I think that's again something which has been done attempted for the first time. QCBS or the quality cum cost basis system, which was permitted only for procurement of consultancy in India so far. For the first time, this has been permitted for procurement of works as well as non-consulting services, both. Secondly, for the procurement of non-consulting services up to 10 crores using QCBS, a fast track system has been also introduced. So firstly, QCBS is now permitted for all works as well as non-consulting services or NCS, and NCS up to ₹10 crores, there could be a fast track system which is permitted. That's the second thing. Then there is a system which has been given in a much detail in the organization that in case you are looking to purchase through QCBS, some has to declare the quality oriented procurement. Of course, all procurements are quality oriented. It's just for the purpose of name which has been given, and it has to be approved either at the level of secretary or the board of directors. Then there will be some committee which will decide what should be the parameters and what should be the scoring methodology for these kinds of figures. Q will not exceed more than 30% for such QCBS. You may recall that in case of a Q factor or the quality factor for consulting services, as per GFR is 80%, and in case of a World Bank projects, it's up to 90%. However, for these contracts, Q will not exceed more than 30%. Something very obvious, criteria should be specific. There should be only one answer for this so that objectivity can be given to this kind of the scoring. Other provisions which has been given in this guidelines about we also encourage the interest payments in case the payments are delayed. While this has been not mandatory, but we are looking to firstly, in case payment is not made within 10 days, some kind of explanation will be called for the government officials why the payment is not being made in time. While we encourage to give the interest payment now, maybe in the next round of amendment, we'll be forcing the government entities to make interest payments in case of the delayed payments. I think this will give more certainty to the contractors and the other stakeholders. We have recreated the other instruction that 75% payment should be made wherever the arbitration award has been challenged. We know it's still a difficult area. There's a few high-profile cases are going on where we could not enforce it 100%, but the intention is there to enforce it as quickly as possible. Debarment guidelines, for the first time again, debarment guidelines has been issued, which will be covering all government department as well as PSUs. We have divided the debarment guidelines into two categories. One, where the debarment will be done for whole of Government of India. That will be done by the Department of Expenditure, and that will be for 3 years. Secondly, the debarment can be done by the individual ministry or the individual PSU. That will be for 2 years. So that will be the quick division will be there. Of course, for all before debarment, some reasonable opportunity need to be given. Yes. Debarment, we also clarified, now the debarment will include the words like banning, suspension, blacklisting, because all of these words always create confusion among the entities. And the debarment will also include the allied firms. The definition has been given in the guidelines. All these guidelines are available in a public domain. So I'm not saying something which is not available in public domain. Debarment, which is done by the individual PSUs or the ministries, can be for the things like non-supply or substandard supply or not agreeing to the contract conditions. For the debarment, which is to be done by the Ministry of Finance, that has to be done only in case they have been punished by some court. So that will be the big difference. So debarment by the individual ministries can be more quick, and there could be some amount of the quickness, but in case of a debarment across the Government of India, since the punishment is very high, they need to be gone through the court process. GEM has been also given a power to debar, because GEM as a centralized portal is doing the same. Let me just take the specific points, otherwise I will skip this. I think this could be very important. In case the person which has been debarred and happens to be L1 in a tender, that will be simply ignored, and the L2 will be considered as L1. Secondly, such L1, the bid security for such L1 bidder will be returned. There will be no bar on that. Third, all existing contracts will remain unaffected. So it should not be that once a person has been debarred, all existing contracts will also be cancelled. That's not the idea. Even the delivery period extension can be given to the bidders which has been debarred later. So there's no bar even on giving a DP extension also. Debarment should not be done normally for less than 6 months. I think we have a gentleman from GEM, so maybe some amount of tweaking either in the GEM or in the instructions will be required, because GEM currently do a debarment for 1 or 2 months also. So it means some amount of synergy will be required as a way forward. I think just in case there is a real shortage of a supplier, there is an item which is supplied only by 1 person or 2 person, some amount of a flexibility is given. The purchasing organizations may take a pragmatic view, may not debar the person in spite of all same level of the issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for that wonderful presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, now we are being joined by Ms. Caroline Nicholas. She will be joining us virtually. She's the Head Technical Assistant Section, International Trade Law Division, UNCITRAL Secretariat, United Nations Office of Legal Affairs. Ms. Caroline, as I mentioned, is joining us virtually. May I say a few words about her before I invite her to make her presentation. Ms. Caroline Nicholas would be speaking on the role of model law and other initiatives of UNCITRAL for public procurement. Very warm welcome to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much and good morning. Is the sound quality okay? Could somebody nod for me if you can hear me okay? Thank you, Sandeep. Very nice to see you. First, I would just like to thank the All India Management Association for the opportunity to say a few words on the UNCITRAL's model law on public procurement and our other work in this field. I was pleased to be with you 4 years ago, I think it was, for a recent for a conference in this field. It's a great pity that I can't be with you physically today, but as we just heard, hybrid conferences these days are the norm, and we will do our best to make the most of them. Now, I'm going to attempt to share my screen. I'm a lawyer, not a technical person, so please give me a moment to try and do that. Could you just nod if you can see that okay? Good, thank you very much. So in the next 15 minutes or so, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the UNCITRAL model law, how it operates to allow governments to take initiatives in public procurement, including the sorts of things that we've just heard about, and some other related initiatives that UNCITRAL has taken in this field. Now, many of you may not know actually what UNCITRAL is, so I'm just going to start with a little bit about what UNCITRAL does. UNCITRAL stands for the United Nations Commission on International Trade Law, and we govern and we address what I call the substantive private law rules governing commercial relations. So that's a bit of a long phrase. What we don't do is the sort of state-to-state relationships that you see in the World Trade Organization. What we do is to talk about the rules that would govern a company in India wanting to sell its goods or services to purchasers in Austria, where I am located. So it's that commercial transaction. And the idea behind UNCITRAL is to try and harmonize the rules, for example, in India and in Austria, so that you can have a level playing field in these cross-border commercial transactions, and also to allow the costs, the additional costs of transacting overseas, the overhead, if you like, of having to find out how the rules in other countries work, whether you will be treated fairly in the contract, and if there's a problem, and all those sorts of commercial issues, how you reduce the information and the transaction costs by making sure that the rules are the same and that they come from an international source or a best practice source that you can rely on them. So that's what UNCITRAL tries to do. We recognize that those sorts of rules and information costs can be a particular burden for smaller businesses, micro, small and medium-sized enterprises. And we just heard about some of the things that we're trying to do in India to improve their access to markets. And we do this because we recognize that cross-border trade can promote economic growth and development, and so it can contribute to the SDGs. Now, I mentioned that we deal with public procurement, we deal with commercial law transactions, and the government is a commercial party in the public procurement sphere. So that's why we deal with B2G commerce and not just B2B commerce. The policy approach behind UNCITRAL's work on public procurement is to allow cross-border competition where the government wishes it to do so. That's because, as I said, we have a policy approach that says that international trade can support growth and development, and I'll elaborate a little bit on what that means in a moment. We wish to drive up standards of governance. We want to improve outcomes in public procurement by embedding good practices and modern practices in our systems, and obviously value for money in what we hope is a post-COVID recovery period will be very important. Other very significant considerations is that we recognize that governments use their systems in the manner that we've just heard to pursue different policy goals, and we want a transparent regime for that sort of smart procurement using innovation or sustainability. And above all, we recognize the enormous scale and potential of public procurement contracts and public procurement markets. Now, the estimates vary. Some say it's $10 trillion worldwide each year. Some say it's 14 trillion. It doesn't really matter what those numbers are. They are just huge. And importantly, as we all know, very significant projects come through public procurement. So that's why UNCITRAL deals with it. And UNCITRAL has a model law. It is a template for national legislation in public procurement. Now, my understanding is, I don't know whether Sandeep Verma is going to talk about that, but it's been used, or some of its provisions have been used in Rajasthan. But it's designed as a template for public procurement at any level. Its main consumers have been economies or countries in transition and developing countries. And very importantly, it focuses on the needs of a national system. So, for example, what India chooses to put in from a policy perspective can be accommodated in the UNCITRAL model law. It is a template. It's designed to be adapted to local circumstances, and we'll come back to that. But very importantly, and given the context of your international partners that are here, it's designed to work with all of the other main international agreements on public procurement, starting with the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, which in its Article 9 has some mandatory rules for procurement systems. And that convention has almost universal application now. For those countries that are joining the World Trade Organization and have signed up to join the WTO as agreement on government procurement, it's consistent and allows you to comply with the legal obligations under that agreement, and indeed similarly for other free trade agreements. And if you're in some other regional economic groupings, there may even be, like there is in the European Union, a single market for public procurement, and that can be used in that context too. The model law has been used in about 50 countries, and importantly, the World Bank and other international partners use it in their own reform programs to give examples of good practices that can be put into place at the national level. And the current iteration dates from 2011, so it's just over 10 years old now. So what is it? It's a framework law, so it doesn't go into the level of detail that we've just heard about for, in this case, the Indian system. So it has all the essential principles and procedures and rules and so forth for all public procurement. There's no exceptions for defence procurement or anything like that. And it implements the three key principles arising from the UN Convention Against Corruption, and those are transparency, competition, and objectivity in decisions. So the idea behind it is to create that level playing field that I'm talking about. All bidders will be treated alike because the rules are transparent, so you can see which rules apply. We're seeking to promote competition and to make sure that there's objectivity and no subjective attempts to rig the market in favor of any particular suppliers. And as I've said, it's compatible with international obligations. Importantly, it needs to be adaptable to allow for any international obligations, such as those under the convention, and local circumstances. Now, India is a huge country with different provinces. Other countries, where I'm sitting in Austria, is much smaller. It has provinces, but a very centralized system. And so we need to be able to adapt for that. We need to be able to adapt for local capacity. UNCITRAL works with, for example, post-conflict states where the capacity is almost non-existent. It also works with quite sophisticated countries. Some of its provisions are used, for example, in Canada and Australia. And in that context, it needs to be able to allow for very sophisticated approaches. And importantly, the model law has some tools for both innovation and sustainability, because we recognize that those are key government priorities in just about all countries, and I'll come back to those in a moment. But very importantly too, and for countries such as India, which may not use the model law itself, it is accompanied by what we call a guide to enactment. Now, the model law is about 60 pages long. It's got 60-something articles. The guide to enactment is about 450 pages long. And so it is a guide that explains the difficult bit. The relatively easy part is to draft a procurement law. The difficult bit is to make it work. And so this guide sets out at different levels why the model law says what it does, what its provisions are designed to achieve, how to implement them and how to use them. And this is really important as a policy guide. And even those countries that don't use the model law do use the guide to enactment to look at the United Nations discussions on these very important policy areas. And it helps them inform the choices that they make in implementing their own laws. It also comments on some excluded areas from the model law. The model law doesn't focus on procurement planning, and it doesn't focus on contract management because it's almost impossible to have a harmonized system for many issues arising in those phases of the procurement process. But it talks about those. It also talks about debriefings, which are very important aspects of trying to avoid procurement challenges or review proceedings when bidders don't win a bid. It doesn't also go into very much detail about sanctions and debarment, the last point that we heard recently, important as those are, because those are areas that are very much connected with national court-based and criminal proceedings and so forth. And so it's not an area that the UN was able to get involved in. To turn to a first aspect of innovation, if you like, in public procurement, it's sustainability. It's a key area for untraceable part of the United Nations family, as I've said. And the model law is designed to allow for green procurement, socially responsible procurement, and to allow for the sort of economic development that allowing smaller businesses can achieve. And so it does this through innovation in processes. It has electronic reverse auctions, as Rajasthan has implemented. It has framework agreements, and you may be hearing from the World Bank later on. We have contributed to a guidebook on those. And it also looks for innovation in outcomes. How do you contract for research and development? How do you stimulate new environmentally responsible processes and so forth? And as I've mentioned, it's subject to international obligations because there may be certain approaches you wish to take. For example, the sort of thing that we've heard about recently, not having international competition. And if you're part of international agreements, you have to look at whether the process you're looking at putting in place will work in the context of those international obligations. But very importantly here, it's based on transparency. So exactly how much more are you prepared to pay for greener procurement? That needs to be made very clear so that you have good bids and you can assess them appropriately. We also recognize, and I'll come back to this in a moment, that there can be some trade-offs. If you require detailed certification of green procurement eco-labels, are smaller businesses able to provide those? These are very important policy considerations, and it's all about how to make this work in your procurement system so that you don't have unintended consequences. And the Guide to Enactment discusses these issues in a great deal of detail. So overall, in the model law, we have a very flexible approach. We have some mandatory approaches and some permissive policies. So mandatory are procedures to ensure that you're competitive, transparent, and objective. Permissive policies allow you but don't require you, for example, to pursue green procurement. We do this through having design approaches, and that's a shorthand term we mean for how you structure your procurement, and then the contractual terms you impose on your bidders. And we'd also recognise that the very different policy priorities among countries, and so the Guide to Enactment explains how these work in practice. And as I've mentioned, we need to deal with the question of procurement objectives and other policy objectives. So if you have, you're looking for best value for money, how do you assess that in the context of trying to procure new and innovative projects, new and innovative services? How do you deal with the trade-off that there may be between having the cheapest, the best value, and the most innovative? So we need to look at that from a practical perspective. And we also need to recognize the governance challenges where things become incredibly complex. How do you set off, for example, an approach that's trying to promote SMEs when you know that some of the SMEs that you're trying to support do not have sustainability in their disposal methods for things that for services or goods that they're putting up. So these things are very complex. It means that transparency is becoming very important. And in practical terms, e-procurement systems, so having tools that allow you to generate good data to assess how you're doing, are very, very important, and we provide for those in the model law. So let's just look very quickly at what we actually mean by this. If we're going to support innovative suppliers, very green suppliers, how do we do that? Well, the first thing you can do is to have qualification criteria. These relate to the supplier, nothing to do with what they're actually producing in terms of goods and services. Very important to recognize is these are pass-fail criteria. So although you can have a broad range of these criteria, suppliers either meet them or they don't. Qualification criteria, to be transparent, are one-stop shops, if you can call it that. You meet them or you don't, but you can say you must have certain processes. You can then set out your terms and descriptions. You want life cycle costing, you want eco-labels and so on, in terms of the goods or services themselves. So this is how you design what you're contracting for. Now, these again are pass-fail approaches. These are the mandatory requirements in your procurement contract and in your terms of procurement. And suppliers meet them or they don't. And this is very important because it allows you to set, if you like, the minimum technical requirements if you wish to have very technical specifications, or you can be much more flexible and have output-based requirements. And particularly if you're looking at innovation and you wish to encourage innovative firms to do this, to provide you with new systems, an output-based approach can be very important, and it can be combined with minimum technical criteria. Now, where we come to how do you reward the best, this is the evaluation. This is how you choose the winner among those that are technically qualified. You can give merit points for the subject matter. That can include how they've prepared the goods and services. And very importantly, there is a general rule in procurement that these must relate to what it is that you're procuring. But under the answer trial model, we have a transparent process that allows you to reward better processes from the supplier, so that you can reward the greenest supplier. Now, that's not necessarily connected to the subject matter because it might relate to general standards in the company. You can allow for that in a transparent way under answer trial. So that's your design approaches. What it allows you to do is to procure innovative products not currently in the market, if that's what you want to do, in flexible ways. Framework agreements allow for longer term contracting, and we have interactive procurement methods that allow technical and some price-based discussions with suppliers, again in a transparent way. And we have some discussions about implementing your contractual terms. Very importantly within that, our tools, as I've mentioned, to ensure that you try and be as inclusive as possible, not just to generate competition, but to allow smaller businesses to take part. And the model law is designed to allow governments to standardize their procedures, to make them as simple as possible, and to allow for some capacity building through things like debriefing meetings before procurement bids are put in and so forth. And small areas like considering whether or not you really need a bid security. Do you really need something like 5 years of previous contracting with the government? Because that can effectively exclude participants from the process. So this is all designed to allow the best possible competition. Now, I mentioned at the beginning that answer trial supports cross-border procurement. Nothing in answer trial requires governments to take all bids from overseas, but again, how we deal with that is transparent in the way that we've already heard from this morning. So long as the rules are clear when you're allowing public procurement competition from overseas and not, that's fine by answer trial, and your international commitments are obviously something that you need to look at. So just to say what this means, for example, for those listening here today, answer trial has a model law. It's available for free on its website. You can download it and use it. You can download and use the guide to enactment. But what we really wish to do is to help countries use and others use our texts in practice. We work very closely with organizations such as the Open Data, the Open Contracting Partnership, to implement open data in procurement that allows outcomes and performance to be assessed much more easily than traditional methods. We encourage integration with e-government tools, and I know you're very sophisticated about that in India. We engage in technical cooperation assistance with the World Bank and other development partners through workshops, appearances like this. We can give more detailed assistance in legal drafting, for example, more detailed rules of the type that we've heard about this morning that can also help implement a law. And as I mentioned, we've collaborated with the World Bank in producing a guidebook on framework agreements. And finally, we recognise the key importance of public-private partnerships. Most governments these days have very significant financial challenges and look at engaging with the private sector to help in the bigger construction infrastructure projects and so forth. You'll find all the text that I've mentioned on our website. You'll see the link up at the top here. We have procurement and public-private partnerships, some additional materials here on the right-hand side. You'll see a link to our working groups and colloquium materials, and everything that UNCITRAL has considered in coming up with its model law is available there. We're completely transparent in our proposals, in the reports of our member states when they discuss these matters. It's all available with a comprehensive bibliography and so forth on our website. Well, that's all I wanted to share with you this morning. I'd be very happy to take questions later on, or I can be contacted via the UNCITRAL website. So thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to hearing more from you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Caroline Nicholas, for joining us virtually and for that wonderful, insightful presentation from your end. Thank you once again. May I now invite Shri K.C. Jha to kindly make his presentation. His presentation is in and around the initiatives taken by the government e-marketplace. Very warm welcome to you, sir.
All ladies and gentlemen here. First of all, I'll thank Emma to get us opportunity to present GEM before you. And a lot of input on policy has already been given by Mr. Sanjay Agarwal. And GEM is nothing but a digital GFR. I mean, whatever Sanjay Agarwal does in a policy, I have to implement digitally in the GEM. So to introduce GEM, it's a one-stop procurement portal for all government goods and services. It was launched on 9th August 2016, and it has been enabled by Rule 149 of GFR. There are three fundamentals of the GEM, that is efficiency, transparency, and inclusiveness. This is the three fundamentals on which we decide everything in the GEM. I mean, we do not compromise these three fundamentals at any point of time. And GEM has multiple mode of procurement, say bidding, reverse auction. There is a direct procurement from the market. And recently we have also launched forward auction. I mean, just reverse auction was going on for procurement, but we have launched forward auction for disposal of the goods also. Public procurement ecosystem is on the seller side and is on the buyer side. I mean, there is a paucity of time, so I'll skip this slide. These are the basically key statistics is there for the GEM. At present, we have 58,000 buyers, 38 lakhs sellers and service providers, nearly 49 lakhs products are there on the GEM, and 93 lakhs plus orders have been generated on the GEM. Total gross merchandise value, I mean, since inception, it is 2 lakhs crore. But every financial year, we grow by 3 times. So this year, we are about to close 1 lakh crore of transaction on the GEM portal. Stakeholders of the GEM are, of course, the internal stakeholders are GEM SPV, MSP, PMU, and buyer is from the across country, central government, state PSU, central PSU, autonomous bodies, all the local governments. And sellers are, all kind of sellers are there. OEM is there, MSME, non-MSME, startup. Startup, we have a special program that I'll discuss separately. And there is authorized resellers, and even the small retailers can sell their product on the GEM. I mean, everybody is welcome on the GEM. There are external government systems where we have done the cross database integrations. They are the Aadhaar, UIDI, GSTN, PFMS, MCA 21, and Income Tax Department. From there, we take the validation of the tax information, balance sheets, turnover. These things we take from the income tax database. We comply to the various inspection systems like CAG, CVC, CGTA, and of course, RTI is definitely there. We have partners of the bank, there is the rating system, and there are other commercial entities. This slide speaks about the key advantage to the buyer. I mean, what GEMS give to the buyer. So it's a end-to-end solution, procurement solution. Many people get confused. It is not a publishing portal. It is not that in 2005, CVC had issued the guidelines, your order should be in the public domain, your tender should be in the public domain. It was a tender publishing system. But GEM is not at all a tender publishing system. GEM is a end-to-end procurement solution, right from your demand aggregations, bidding, reverse auction, contracting, post-contract amendments, then the billing, invoicing, payments, everything is there on the line. I mean, technically no papers are required when you process the thing on the GEMS. Of course, people take the printout, keep in their file, take approval from their bosses. Those things are still going on. But those things are also we are going to eliminate. Financial authority, we are going to make a user role. So finance approval will be there on the line. So these things are there in the pipeline. So whatever manual process we find that is obstructing the procurement, I mean, what is delaying the procurement. So those roles also we are creating day by day on the GEM. And we are making the seamless procurement totally through the digital systems. Ease of use, it's a government Amazon. I mean, you have to have a browser and a mouse with you, and the entire procurement happens there itself. If you see our GEM, there is a marketplace. I mean, all the catalogs are there in the marketplace. So the procurement is market-based procurement we started. So there is an option for the searching, selecting, carting, ordering, like Amazon, just like Amazon or any e-commerce portal that is there on the front of the GEM. And behind that, there is all public procurement rules, regulations for the eligibility, evaluation, everything is there on the back side. There is a rich listing of goods and services catalog on the GEM. And there is a very user-friendly dashboard. I mean, dashboard is for the buyer, dashboard is for the seller, dashboard is there for the organizational head, Secretary of the Government of India, we have given them the dashboard. Chairman of PSC, we have given them the dashboard. So they can see the downline, what kind of procurement is going on. I mean, how much it is efficient and all. And order processes are also all there on the GEM. Invoicing is there. Our invoicing is GST compliant. And recently we have given this option for multiple consignee and staggered delivery. So long-term contract you can create on the GEM. It's not that only you create a short-term contract, you can create even the long-term contracts. There is a bunching of the goods and services. And one small decision support system we have created, price trend for the products. So when you go for buy, you at least see last 5-6 transactions of that product which has happened on the GEM, exactly who has purchased or what price it has gone. So those things you can see. So these are the facility for the buyers. And these are the different procurement tool we have given. The direct purchase is from the market. You can go for L1 buying up to 25,000, you can go straight buying. This is requirement of the GFR. From 25 to 5 lakhs, you can go for a L1 buying on the portal itself without going for any bidding or reverse auction. So this is there. But of course, if you find in the market price is higher, then go for a bidding or reverse auction. Then intent of buying and PSC bid. This is also a functionality we have created. This functionality is like that. If product is not there on the market, but still you require to have it. So you create your intent on the portal and we notify the sellers and they come and list and you get the procurements. So this is one we have created. And buying through intent bid is there, reverse auction and bid is there. It's a very, I mean, from version 1 itself, the feature is available. Advantage to the seller is that they have access, I mean, once they list a product, it is accessed by all government departments. So marketing cost is not there. And they can go for bid, reverse auction or product listing. They can go for a dynamic pricing. Dynamic pricing is that if there is a upward trend in the market, you can go and change in the market. If price has gone downward, you can reduce your price on the market. So your product becomes very competitive in the market and there is a very high tendency to get the orders. Vendor rating we have definitely introduced. Earlier our vendor rating system was there on the quality, delivery. It was created by GEM. But this vendor rating system now we have implemented since last 6 months. This was on the recommendation of IIM Ahmedabad, and those vendor rating we have implemented nearly 6 months back. So for the new product, seller can suggest the new product. There is a dashboard for the seller, I mean for their secondary, their primary sellers. And all news, events, updates, this goes to the seller through dashboard. I mean, just he has to open the dashboard, he will see what are the new updates has come, new features, functionality, methodology, guidelines. Everything is delivered to the seller through their dashboard. And there are many new things are on the GEM. I mean, whatever we launch on the GEM, if you go and click on the new, you get whatever recently we have launched since last 1 month or 1.5 months. These are the GEM support channels. There is a frequently asked question. Then there is online chatting, 8 to 8, 12 hours support system we give. And there is a call center. And we have given a walk-in, I mean, somebody can walk in Delhi also. We have created a walk-in team also in the Jivantara building. So if somebody's problem is not solved, they come for the solution and resolution. These are basically social media support. I mean, we are there on the Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, everywhere we are there. Online webinars we keep on doing. Focused online webinar and conferences also we keep on doing for the dedicated to seller and buyer and the industry association. This keeps on going. There is an online training, video training, interactive training, learning management system. Those things we have created. This is for the buyer and this is also for the seller. GEM 4.0, we have created certain new features and functionality. This I would like to discuss in the detail. Like you have in the YouTube, if you speak something, there is a natural language processing search is there. So those search engines also we have created and implemented on GEM. For ease of payment and timely payments, as Mr. Agarwal said, we have also notified a penal interest to the buyer. I mean, if you delay the payment, then you are liable to pay interest of 1% to the GEM. So this is also to pressurize buyer. I mean, they are the government entity. Normally, they do not come under any pressure. But we have tried to make some system to create a pressure on the buyer to release the timely payment. There is a customized dashboard. For BI dashboard, we have created separately. We give the seller 2 dashboards. One is the BI dashboard, one is the application dashboard. BI dashboard, you can see your statistics and everything, and application dashboard, you can see your transactions. There is a business cockpit for OEM. This is a basically We have created some intelligence and we sell it to the OEM on a annual fee of 6 lakhs rupees. So lot of IT OEM has taken this business cockpit and they are able to track, I mean, he's my reseller. He has sold some 300 piece of computer, but he has only purchased 150 piece from me. Then from where 150 piece has come. So those kind of intelligence we give to OEM. This gives the benefit to government buyer and OEM both. I mean, to us, it's a genuine product which flows to the government supply. No counterfeit or fake product. They control their reseller. And they also get, I mean, business advantage by taking this cockpit. There is a corner for CPSE and large buyer. And many incentive we are trying to create for the seller, I mean, for their marketing of the product, they can give ad, those things also we are working. Unified procurement system, we are trying to move about that. We have goods and services now, and we are going to create a procurement for the works. So works, goods, services, and project, everything will be on the GEM. So we are working for unified procurement systems. We are creating faster goods and services categories. I mean, if you see our portal, nearly 5,000 product category we have already created. There is a login and authentication for the buyers. I mean, we go through their Aadhaar number, authenticate buyer. In case of seller, we authenticate that they are the key resource person in the income tax database. Those kind of authentication is there. Demand aggregation we have implemented on our portal. I mean, if suppose some state government department has to buy UPVC pipe, recently government of UP has done it. So all organization, they fill up the indent form, indicate their quantity, class, designation, submit to the portal to a demand aggregating buyer. So entire demand is aggregated and a single bid is created, and their capacity based bidding is there. Then their head of office, they finalize the order, and all individual department, they place order on the competitive price, I mean aggregated price. So these functionality we have created and we have also implemented. Input tax credit based evaluation. This was demanded by many commercial entity and the public sector units. So ITC based evaluation we have created. If any government department or any commercial entity, they get input tax credit, indicate this much credit I get percentage. So that much part we offset and determine the L1 based on removal of that much price from the quoted price. So this is one of the recent feature we have implemented and many organizations are doing this. Item wise and consignee wise evaluation. I mean, you can go for a bunched evaluation, you can go for a group of item evaluation, you can go for consignee wise evaluation, and accordingly you can create the orders. Staggered delivery, long-term contract you can create on GEM. We have also brought price variation for long-term stability of the contract. So these new features we have brought into the GEM. And these features, basically, many of these features were available on the DGS&D systems. So that we have implemented in the GEM. We have created forward auctions, freight intensive item handling. If you want to buy cement on the GEM, then cost of cement and cost of freight is almost equal. So that cannot go from the market based procurement. So freight intensive item buying functionality we have created. Vendor rating is completely database driven, automated, and without intervention of any manual system. So this I told you on the recommendation of IIM Ahmedabad, we have revised it recently. And incident management on the GEM is totally system driven. I mean, if any buyer has any grievance, they raise incident, they escalate incident. In so-called notice is issued to the seller through their dashboard. Whatever they reply, it is examined and debarment is taken place on the GEM portal. Like we have copied here debarment from the Korean system, where MSME is debarred only for 15 days in Korea. They say if we debar MSME for 6 months time, the unit will be closed and it is lost to the country, and there is a loss of employment also. So in Korea, CONEF system, they debar only for 15 days. Second incidents, they debar for 1 month. India, we have done 1 month, 2 months, and 3 months debarment. So this is a short-term debarment we have placed in the GEM. And there is a custom bid and services. If goods and services are not available, then you can go for the custom bid. And once we receive many custom bid, we create a category and create a normal goods and services catalog. So these are, and last point, this was being demanded by the Jammu Kashmir and Northeast buyers, because they do not get many sellers, I mean, across the country to supply to them. So we have created a local buying function there. I mean, you put your PIN code and sellers within that area, they will get notification and quote it. So this is the one facility we have created for hard area buyers. BOQ bidding has been implemented. Catalog management system 3.0, we have created many dependency parameters and all. I mean, this is little high tech. And GEM Sahay integration, this is a beautiful thing and it is a boon to the small scale sector. It's a basically financial support that comes from the financial institutions to the GEM vendors. If you get an order from the GEM, you can go to GEM Sahay and click. They will evaluate your vendor rating. They will evaluate your past performance area and the order details, and they will get you the loan. The beauty of digital GEM Sahay integration is a loan of 10,000 rupees is given by a financial institution to a vendor. Earlier, this was not happening because bank and financial institution, they incur a cost in the assessment itself. Nearly a lakhs of rupees is the cost of assessment for the vendor, whether I should give him a loan or not. So because of this digital GEM Sahay integration, even loan of 10,000, 3,000, 4,000 has been given on the GEM. So this is again a revolution which has been brought by GEM in the procurement. There is advanced analytics. I mean, we are working on a fraud detection systems. And whenever we run analytics, we are able to see, I mean, where is the some kind of malpractice in the procurement. I mean, one buyer is continuously giving a seller a small order of 30,000, 30,000, 30,000. He could have gone for the bidding also. But those analysis comes and we report their head of department. I mean, this is happening under you. Buyer specific ATC, additional terms and conditions, we have introduced. Since a lot of order was failing, direct market order was failing, so caution money functionality we have created. I mean, if you are given order from the market, you do not execute that order, so we forfeit your caution money. Caution money is not a very big money. For the small, MSC, it is 5,000. Then it is 10,000, then 20,000. This is small money we have taken just to sensitize the seller. They should not put any useless catalog in the market. So these are basically some of the key achievements I wanted to tell you is that NRL placed an order of 2,600 crore, a single order. Uttar Pradesh government placed an order of 2,035 crore. This is for the smartphone and the tablets. NALCO and ONGC placed an order of 400 crore for the casing pipes. It is not on the GEM, small procurement is happening. I mean, a procurement of 1,000 to 4,000 crore is happening on the GEM. So this is from the GEM. Thanks a lot. If you have any query, we'll have a QA session and I'll be able to reply all your query. I am a co-founder of GEM. GEM is GEM is not my profession. GEM is my passion. So whatever question you ask, I'll be happy to reply. Thanks.
Thank you so much, sir, for that wonderful presentation. We now would request our next panelist to kindly make the presentation, but before I do so, may I say a few words about our next panelist, Shri Sandeep Verma.
Good afternoon, all of you, and I'm especially grateful to Professor Gurbanani Kaur for extending me this invitation. A good morning to Caroline Nicholas, if she is still joined with this conference, depending on what part of the world she is in at this point of time. I'm going to try some hybrid mode here because I studied in 12 schools in my 12 years, and उसमें से आधे हिंदी मीडियम थे, आधे इंग्लिश मीडियम थे. So ना तो मेरी इंग्लिश अच्छी है, ना मेरी हिंदी बहुत अच्छी है. So that's the only liberty I'll take. I'm going to talk of traditional and non-traditional approaches to modernization of public procurement, and I was asked by Professor Kaur to especially look at what is happening in states. Because there's a lot of action in the central government, but what exactly is happening in states? I'll bring experiences from my own state, the state of Rajasthan. And since I'm in touch with a whole lot of friends, batchmates, colleagues, seniors, juniors in the IS who work in other states in procurement related functions, I'll try and shed some light on that as well. But I did spend a lot of time trying to figure out what is modernizing public procurement. What is a modern public procurement system look like? What are its attributes? And when can we say that this procurement system is modern? And looking at Rajasthan, for instance, Rajasthan is one of the first states, I think it is the first state in India to adopt the UNCITRAL model law on procurement of goods and services. And we also have an electronic procurement system in Rajasthan. And yet just about 15 days back, I was attending a meeting of an executive committee of a major construction agency in Rajasthan. And we had about 50 agenda items, of which 45 related to contracts, high value contracts ranging from a few crores to 150, 200 crores. And out of those 45 contract related agendas on the table, there were procedural mistakes in all 45 of them. Right? There were substantive and serious mistakes in at least 20 of them. So, and Rajasthan, as I mentioned, we have the UNCITRAL model law, we have e-procurement, and yet we make very, very serious mistakes in public procurement. So what is it that defines a modern public procurement system? And my own take on it, and I'm sure there are hundred or thousands of ways to look at what is a modern procurement system. To me, just for ease of understanding, एक ऐसा procurement system जो efficient हो, और एक ऐसा procurement system जो unnecessary delays को avoid करता हो. So something that's efficient and something that really avoids unnecessary delays, unnecessary disputes, unnecessary cost escalations, unnecessary time delays. I think I'm happy working with that kind of a procurement system and calling it, yes, this is a modern procurement system if it does not result in something like that. Just a fine print, when I speak, what I speak are all my personal views. These are not formal views of the government of Rajasthan or government of India for that matter. The elements of a modern public procurement system, to my understanding, can come into play at any point of time during a procurement life cycle. So you have a procurement planning stage, then you have something, the pre-award stage, which is from issue of NIT till the issue of a work order. And then you have the post-award stage, which is really the contract administration stage. And to most procurement professionals, it is really the post-award stage that's the most mind-boggling stage in a public contract. As we say, and I certainly like to believe that, that public procurement is like an iceberg. So, जो NIT से लेके work order देना is just that 10% tip of the iceberg. The real 90% of the problem lies with the post-award stage of running a contract well. And in public services, the other interesting issue is that most of the time, we don't design the NIT. right? Most of us don't design the NIT. We have very lucky few or lucky opportunities in my life, for instance, in 25 years of public contracts, looking at various departments. There have been half a dozen or 1 dozen tenders that I've had the opportunity to design myself. Most of the time it was a faulty NIT issued by somebody else. Most of them a faulty contract agreement signed by somebody else. And then as a public officer, I was supposed to run it well. So to me, this really is the hardcore part. So I'll talk very briefly about that as well. Pre-award stage, tender process phase. What should a modern procurement system have? I think basics, it's clarity and consistency of pre-qualification criteria. Now, this is something that, I mean, it's not just a phrase. When I see experiences in Rajasthan department after department, pre-qualification criteria like net worth, pre-qualification criteria on experience kitna hona chahiye. Some of them are so specific that most of the time the PQ criteria are designed to make sure that only 1 or 2 favored bidders can come into the procurement process, resulting in loss of competition and escalated bid values. So something on this, I think to me is very, very essential for any procurement system. Meaningful pre-bid meetings. Now, pre-bid meetings is a mandatory condition in most public contracts, but my own experience has been over 25 years, right or wrong, is that pre-bid meetings tend to become very formal occasions. बिडर आते हैं, कुछ सवाल पूछते हैं और इंजीनियर वहां बैठ करके उसका एक स्टैंडर्ड जवाब दे देता है कि कॉन्ट्रैक्ट क्लॉज XYZ में ये चीज हमने पहले क्लियर कर चुकी है इन फुल स्टॉप, rather than listening to them. And I think what's happened with the pre-bid meeting process in India and in various states is that the tenders, particularly large tenders, वो इतने complicated होते हैं कि हम कहीं कैबिनेट से अप्रूवल लेके बैठे हैं, मैं कहीं अपने चेयरमैन से अप्रूवल लेके बैठा हुआ हूँ. And then if in a pre-bid meeting a contractor comes and even if he gives me a genuine suggestion, I say कि उसको वापस कैबिनेट तक कौन लेके जाएगा, इससे अच्छा इसको बोल दो स्वतः स्पष्ट है, this is already clear, and don't answer it. In one of the tenders that we ran in Rajasthan when I was principal secretary of the Public Health Engineering Department, 2 tenders, we got about 450 queries in a pre-bid meeting. And my engineers came running, कि सर ये तो पहली बार हो गया ऐसा. So I said, now we are going to answer each and one of them of those 450. And if we have to change our tender conditions, there will be no ego issue in this at all. We are going to make changes. So we made 200 changes out of those 450 queries. We extended the time for bidding. And we did it this twice because it's not that pre-bid meeting is the only occasion when a bidder comes to you with a suggestion. They kept coming and we said, fine, we'll keep revising it until and unless we can be satisfied there's going to be enough competition in these contracts. And those 2 contracts were worth 1,000 crores alone. And I'm happy to claim that for a department like Public Health Engineering Department, Rajasthan, which has a history of resultant single vendor cases in large contracts, we got 4 bidders and 5 bidders and 6 bidders in each one of those contracts. And as a result of that, against an NIT value of 1,000 crores, we got the bid value was only 800 crores. We saved 200 crores just by listening more to what was happening in that. So I think we have to have a system of more meaningful pre-bid meetings. But one suggestion I give to other IS officers and other colleagues is that even a draft RFP can be open for discussion. We're going to buy 1,000 buses in Rajasthan over a period of time. We're buying 100 buses immediately. And our draft RFP will be discussed with potential bidders. Pre-bid meeting to bahut baat ki baat hai. We're going to have an open consultation with potential bidders and see कि हमारे RFP में कोई कमी हो तो ऐसे ही बता दो इससे पहले कि हम उसको जारी कर दें. Debarred entities list. Now the Ministry of Defense came up with a new blacklisting guideline a few years back. Ministry of Finance has come in. Is there any place in India where I can go and find out which bidders are debarred? हर एक सरकारी टेंडर में एक स्टैंडर्ड कंडीशन होती है कि आप क्या किसी भी स्टेट गवर्नमेंट या किसी पीएसयू और केंद्रीय एजेंसी से कभी भी ब्लैक लिस्ट हुए या डीबार हुए. वो कंडीशन तो हम लिख देते हैं, वी आस्क फॉर दैट इंफॉर्मेशन, बट वेदर ही इज लाइंग टू अस और नॉट लाइंग टू अस, वी हैव नो वे ऑफ वेरीफाइंग, because there is really no central place where you can go and find out who has been bidded on what ground for how many months. And therefore, to me as a procurement practitioner, it's most essential. I've done it about 6 years back in Rajasthan. Again, we are the first department to have a debarred entities list in Rajasthan in a particular department. How robust is your technical evaluation? Are you seeking information that you need? Are you seeking extra information? Like this information, for instance, now in Government of India, the new system is that if you are debarred by a ministry, then you are basically blacklisted only for tenders in that ministry. So why should PWD department be asking whether you have been debarred in some other ministry? How does it matter? Right? Why ask for that information at all in the first place? Why ask for something like what is your bid capacity when nobody knows anybody's bid capacity for sure ever? Is there a centralized list where every bidder's bid capacity is known? It's a dynamic figure anyway. So these kind of things that I find in tenders that create a huge opportunity for our own contracting officers to then game tenders or fix tenders or to award tenders to favored suppliers. Clarifications and modifications of bid. This again, I think, is a useful criteria. Agar bid mein koi kami hai, to it should be allowed. Small things like how to determine L1. If supposing an L1 bidder withdraws, what happens to the L2 bidder? Will he now be asked to price match with L1 bidder? In the blacklisting rule of Government of India, now L2 becomes the new L1, right? So various scenarios like this need to be explained very clearly to a bidder, because otherwise, I mean, I learned basics of government tenders from my own batchmates who left IIT and went to work for private companies, because their standard response is, we don't, I mean, this was when we were all young and 25. And their response is, we don't like bidding for government contracts because पहले तो technical criteria match fixing करते हो, उसके बाद technical evaluation में match fixing करते हो, और उसके बाद अगर मैं tender मिल भी जाएगा मुझे तो your complaint system is so wide that अगर आपका favored contractor को tender नहीं मिला तो उसकी इतनी शिकायत करा दोगे कि वो भाग जाएगा, उसको payment नहीं मिलेगा, he'll just leave and quit and go. Now all that I started learning from them, and I incorporated that over a period of time. How do you handle bid withdrawal? Appeal system. Now in Rajasthan, we have a first appeal and a second appeal against bid contracting decisions as part of Rajasthan Transparency and Public Procurement Act. But the interesting thing is that जब भी कोई first appeal आती है और genuine आती है and किसी engineer को समझ में आ जाता है कि अब ये बात आगे बढ़ेगी, the bidder is probably right, what they do is they cancel the procurement process instead and start afresh, right? Instead of listening to his appeal, instead of tweaking the tender document, it's always easier and non-controversial for procurement officials to just cancel the procurement process and put a new tender in the market. So small things like that, which I think, I mean, they look like small things, but again, my experience is a professional procurement system or a modern procurement system should be able to handle all of this very well. And this is my last slide, which is really, actually, as I said, 90% of the iceberg is hidden under the water. And this is 90% of that iceberg. How do you handle hindrances? And there are models within the country. NHAI has a hindrance handling clause in its contracts, which is very professionally drafted. It's a one-page clause. It says hindrances that are outside, that are not foreseen, will be paid for an extra item. Now, very simple thing that's being done in India, but it's not being done in states. In Rajasthan, for instance, कोई hindrance आएगी अगर मैं एक नेशनल हाईवे को 4 लेन से 6 लेन कर रहा हूँ या स्टेट हाईवे को और बाद बगल में पानी की पाइपलाइन आ जाती है, how is that hindrance going to be handled? वो पाइपलाइन शिफ्टिंग का खर्चा कौन वहन करेगा? There is no clarity in Rajasthan and no clarity in many states like that, despite the fact that NHAI has a clause. For donkey's years now, it has had this clause. Clarifications, disputes, and अगर contractor को कोई dispute raise कर देता है, then we should be able to put in place a system where his dispute can be handled while the contract goes on. It is not necessary for me to terminate a contract before I can start looking at dispute resolution. छोटी-छोटी disputes आएंगी किसी भी large value infrastructure works contract में, and there should be an efficient parallel system of handling the dispute की fine. एक आपकी dispute है, let's take the contract forward. Artificially low bids, unbalanced bids. Now all this creates a huge mess up for a procurement system, because then bidders bid artificially low, they complete the first 1 month, 2 months of work, then they disappear. Inspections and timeliness of payments. Now for me, interest payment is vital. अगर किसी contractor का payment unduly delay किया जाए, there has to be a clause at the Government of India level now, and the time has come that we will penalize. I don't even suggest 1%. I say put any figure, put 0.1%. But once that public official, that engineer, whoever is to finalize or authorize the payment, if he knows that agar usne unduly kisi ka bill withhold kiya hai, so 0.1% of a 200 crore contract is enough. Now, he'll be running here and there for the rest of his life because that money will be recovered from him. So you don't even have to make it 1% interest payment, make it 0.01%. It doesn't matter. But there will be a discipline in the process, because otherwise what I find, and I find it across state after state, having conversations with my friends in the IAS, is that everywhere this is a serious problem. I don't like your face. I'm not going to give you timely payment. Subcontracting. Now, I was having a conversation with some people last week in my office. I said, since we started as human beings, as human species, as Homo sapiens, we started subcontracting, I think, 2000 years back. Right? Today in this room, I'm sure we have an office job. And after doing our office jobs, हम कोई खेती नहीं करते, हम कोई धान नहीं काटते, हम कोई आटा नहीं गूंथते खुद जाकर के. There's somebody doing it. मैं जाकर के अपने जूते नहीं सिलता हूँ. Right? I have a job from 9 to 6. And after that, my shoemaking is now subcontracted. My dressmaking is subcontracted. And that's how we are as human beings for 2000 years. Yet I find in government contract that this big thing about subcontracting. कि आपको subcontracting allow नहीं करेंगे. आप under the table subcontracting कर लो, लेकिन formally हम recognize नहीं करेंगे. A typical water supply project is subcontracted 90% anyway, because no L&T is going to start manufacturing pipes just because it's on a pipeline contract. No L&T is going to start manufacturing cement just because it's got a pipeline contract. So no NCC is going to start manufacturing electrical equipment just because it's got a pipeline contract. And 90% of the contract is going to be subcontracted anyway. And therefore, why this thing? तो ना आपको subcontracting allow करेंगे हम, और अगर आप कहीं subcontracting का experience certificate ले आओगे तो उसको हम आपका experience भी count नहीं करेंगे. I find this completely ridiculous given the fact, as I mentioned, as human beings, we have subcontracted our lives 2000 years back. Why not in the public procurement system? Contract termination. There are three types of basic contract terminations. There's a contract termination for failure to achieve conditions precedent. There's something called a contract termination for convenience. There's something called a contract termination for default. Now, to me, these are very, very simple things that I find most of the practitioners working on the side of government don't understand, and where they need to terminate a contract for convenience, they'll terminate it for default, and then there'll be an arbitration case that will extend to years, and lo and behold, the arbitrator will then come and say, it was a contract for convenience, and therefore now you better pay this much of payment. Force majeure change of law. Now, change of law, when GST came in, it was a change of law situation for government contractors. Right? When COVID came in, it was treated as force majeure. It was effectively a change of law situation. Now, do our contracts allow for these kind of things? These kind of things happen all the time. In a real world, the law will change all the time. There will be force majeure events all the time. And therefore, a modern public procurement system should be able to address how to handle basic situations, foreseeable situations like this. Re-award of terminated contracts. Now, this is something that has been talked about in the MOF guidelines of October 2021. In the infrastructure sector, at least 25% contracts get terminated for default. And the balance work is again put to a retender. Now, that's something mentioned in the October guidelines. What are the principles for designing a contract for retendering of balance works? Now, this is a subject on which the Supreme Court on a couple of occasions has said some things. And we in the Public Health Engineering Department in Rajasthan, we issued what I think are what could be India's first guidelines on how to design a tender for terminated contracts, keeping in view that most of these terminated contracts are to be awarded the risk and cost of the original bidder. What precautions to be taken? What special precautions need to be taken for designing this? So this is all I had to say, that when it comes to a modern public procurement system, it should be able to answer at least the 10, 15 points that I mentioned in these two slides. And if it's not able to answer that, then it's not modern. So before I say X state is modern, Y state in India is modern, which department government of India is modern, I think if we are able to answer, if their procurement system is answering this professionally, clearly, I would treat that as modern. And this is the direction that in which we started moving. I think October 21 circular of MOF is really a game changer. And I hope that we multiply that circular 10-fold, 20-fold over the next few months. and make sure that it has the impact that was intended behind it. So thank you very much. I'm grateful for this opportunity to speak.